fundamentally, edutainment is the secret weapon for growing a B2B company. There's no doubt.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Whenever somebody gives me shit because I'm not a zero revenue bootstrapper, I will respond to them and say, I have 30 million ARR company that has 40 people. I'm a bootstrapper. These guys are creating these sexy looking companies like 11x AI and Artisan. Those are just spam cannons, right? Let me tell you what Gmail doesn't want. They don't want a robot spamming them.
If marketing was an Olympic sport, you'll possibly be the world champion.
Fundamentally, edutainment is the secret weapon for growing a B2B company. There's no doubt.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So
whenever somebody gives me shit because I'm not a zero revenue bootstrapper, I will respond to them and say, I have 30 million ARR company that has 40 people. I'm a bootstrapper.
If marketing was an Olympic sport, you'll possibly be the world champion.
These guys are creating these sexy looking companies like 11x AI and Artisan. Those are just spam cannons, right? Let me tell you what Gmail doesn't want. They don't want a robot spamming them.
Hi, Adam. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. Good to see you in person. It feels like I've known you for a long while now.
Well, that means it's working.
It's working. It definitely is. So good to have you with us, Adam. Welcome. We at Edbound, that's the name of this podcast that we are starting. Edbound stands for a new kind of emotion backed up with educational content, right? Whatever you do inbound or outbound, you layer it with educational content, and I call it Edbound. That's kind of the spinal cord of everything we talk about is growth and marketing, right? So welcome, and I don't think there could have been a better guest than you to talk about, playbooks that you've kind of invented, mastered, and you're inspiring literally millions. I mean, $1 million in ARR in about 16 weeks. Am I right with your current startup?
Yeah, something like that. Every overnight success is 10 years in the making.
I know.
It was a lot of things coming together to make that happen. But yeah, the short story is that's what happened.
Wonderful. And retention.com is an iconic brand. We all know about it. And I think you kind of touched about $30 million in ARR there, and you've kind of put it on autopilot. And it's inspiring to all of us for two reasons. One, obviously, it's bootstrapped. It's a dream. When someone pointed me towards your content for the first time, this friend of mine was funded by Sequoia. And, the way she said it, obviously I can't take her name, but the way she said it is, we keep doing this shit with raising all this money. But what Adam's talking about, we wish we'd met that content earlier. And, retention, RB2B, what you're talking about is just so inspiring. So I would love to hear the crux of your message. What is it that you're showing the world that they're becoming your fans? And, why did she refer me to your content? I know it, but I would like to hear from you.
Great. Okay. So one of my content pillars is talking about this bootstrap versus VC topic. And I think it's interesting for a lot of reasons. Probably the biggest reason is I know a lot of people who have raised VC. I don't know a lot of people who have exited companies. I know a few. I know even fewer people who have taken large secondary rounds. And I know a handful of people who have taken small secondary rounds. Those people who've taken small secondary rounds have great businesses, but they've only taken a few $1 million out of them. I think if you have a great business, you should make millions of dollars every year. In every other market in the world, you do. But you get on this VC treadmill, and there are businesses that, if they were run a certain way, would be fantastic businesses that in most cases don't actually make it to this promised land that everyone agreed was the way that we were going when we signed this first piece of paper, right? So, and then there's sort of I'm going to create, I'm going to IPO this, and, statistically, it's just really hard to do that unless, you have this killer enterprise SaaS and you're, really going for it. But I had heard about a guy in, I think it was 2017 when my company was stuck at 3 million, and I was in the email newsletter space, and he was also in the email newsletter space, and he had within a few years, grown his company to 30 million ARR and gotten stuck. But super lean. And he was like, he was like the sole founder, and he was banking $20 million every year. And I just like had never heard that, but to me, that actually seemed easier to do than create something that's just growing indefinitely and you IPO it. It seemed much more achievable, at least in the world I operated in, SMB. It seemed like you could get a company, my experience with these things is like, there's this natural churn rate, because nothing that I've ever built has had net revenue expansion, but there's this natural churn rate that just stalls you out at a certain point. That planted the seed. And then when I started Get Emails, which is now retention.com, it was like, oh, like there's, the churn is bad, but like there's enough demand for this to where I'm very confident I could get it to that size and run in that way. It's this amazing machine, it's just the best business in the world, right? Like, and you're not like those things that I started talking about in the beginning. Is like, you're not dependent on a transaction to realize the fruits of your labor, right? Like, it's happening every quarter for me, and like, yeah, maybe I'll sell someday, maybe I won't, but like, there's no pressure to. It's better if I don't in many ways, right? Because the thing just keeps growing and getting more valuable. And in the meantime, I'm sort of like, paying off my mortgage and like doing stuff, to get my family in like a great financial situation without selling anything, which is fantastic. So, I sort of fell into having this large audience. It wasn't really by design, but all of a sudden I have it. And one of the stories that I want to tell are stories like this guy, Ross from Maripost, who I talked about. I want to tell my story because it's just another example of it, right? Like, there is this possibility, and, yes, it may take you a little bit longer or whatever, but like starting small and then just using cash flow from something small to stack bigger and bigger things on top of it over the course of a decade amounts to something spectacular. And by the way, even if you're on the venture track, it's probably taking you a decade anyway, and it's probably not going to work out for you. Literally, that is not an exaggeration. That's like the math of it.
I'm feeling it. I'm not just listening to it, I'm feeling it. I mean, I love the way you approach this, but it's not just your thoughts about how you run a company, build it. But I think I really want to go deeper into it and understand your thought behind how did you come across that, or the idea that this is the way you're going to grow your business. And
so, man, I try a lot of stuff. I will just try anything. And it's like, the crazier it is, the better. My view of, I think that in order to get explosive growth from zero, it's incredibly difficult, but like, you need a product that is good enough to have word of mouth. It's essential that you do, because if you do not, the best marketing in the world is not going to help. I have this core fundamental belief. It's like, without word of mouth, nothing else that you do will work. With word of mouth, there's a million things you can do to speed it up, right? So the two sort of like successes that I had, I got Get Emails which is now retention.com. I got that company off the ground pretty quickly with hardly any resources. And then this one, our B2B. Similar in many ways, different in a couple. So what was similar is the product was very novel when I launched it, right? So retention.com, when I launched it, no one in this market that we were selling into had ever heard that you could get an email from a website visitor who didn't fill out a form. So it was just like, stop them in their tracks. And it worked. It really did that. And then just dumb luck, I was able to run this. I just had this idea that if I made a 60-second Facebook ad, right? Like, it was me and my wife, and it was funny, and we kind of answered the sales objections. Then like, people would look forward to the ad the next week. They'd get used to seeing that. And then if they were looking forward to your ads, you won the game, right? Like, it's kind of like, and these ads were outrageous. And it really worked for 6 months. And how the math on it was like, generally Facebook for B2B will give you these people who are bad customers, right? They're wannabe entrepreneurs. They sign up for your thing and it's like 20% churn per month. That was happening. But we had this PLG where you could click your way to $5,000 a month. And once every week or two, we were getting a whale that would just come in and buy a $5,000 plan without even talking to us. And it would pay for the prior ads over a certain period. So as with my experience with ads, as I scaled the spend, it got less and less effective. And then at one point, 8 weeks went by and I'd spent like 40 grand on ads and I hadn't gotten a single big customer. And like all we were bringing on were these like 20% per month churning customers. So it's like, we got to stop this and do something else. But the point is, it gave an unbelievable amount of air cover. You know, like it was an incredible top of funnel awareness mechanism to accelerate this word of mouth that we were getting. Like people would sign up and be like, oh, I saw the ads. Like whether they clicked through to an ad or not, it was like making our cold email work better. That's just like, it was incredible. It was amazing. You know, without those ads, like it would have been much, much slower. But it only worked for a finite amount of time. And like, I don't know if I could do it again today. You know, it was just a thing that I tried that worked. And when it stopped working, I stopped doing it. So what is different about our B2B in that? What is the same actually is, you know, I'm getting this incredible air cover, you know, very top of funnel from this LinkedIn founder brand. And I think, you know, it's a brand marketing effort. It's like I just don't think there's any other type of brand marketing that would work for a startup with zero revenue other than the type that I'm doing on LinkedIn for this audience. So the thing that's the easiest to be like, that just doesn't work anymore is the whole, I call it the predictable revenue model, where you get kids out of university, you put them in a seat, you have them type keys and click their mouse, and that magically creates demos for you. When there were 10 and 100 companies doing that, it worked beautifully. When there was 100,000 companies doing that same thing, that's just not the arbitrage anymore, right? Like it is so, so if I asked you, Kenner, like, do you believe that more email will be sent in 2026 than 2025? What would be your answer?
I mean, from all data, it's going to be quite a large amount, right? I mean, much larger than what it was.
Exponentially more every year, right? And like there's nothing
Absolutely.
that I'm more confident in that like, you know, these guys are creating these sexy looking companies like 11x AI and Artisan. Like those are just spam cannons, right? Like the world doesn't want a robot to spam, right? Like, let me tell you what Gmail doesn't want. They don't want a robot spamming them, right? Like, but like the response to, so that I think is a fundamental reason why that type of outreach has lost effectiveness. The supply demand versus how it was 10 years ago is just on its head. In the response to it not working is just more volumes and more innovative ways of spamming. Like 5 years ago, we used our primary domain and we had 5 people sitting in the Philippines that were doing manual lead gen during one half of their day. And they were literally sending manual emails off of 5 different inboxes in the other half of their day. Like you can't do that now, right? Your domain will get torched. What you have to go through to try to get an email delivered cold is crazy. It's 100 steps. And like next year, it'll probably be 1,000 steps, right? Like, will there still be some value to people who know how to do that? Like, of course, because man, if you can get email through, it's great, but like it is going to get harder. And usually the response to less effectiveness is higher volume, which just makes the problem worse. So that is the problem with that. And like, it wouldn't even be such a big conversation if it wasn't a huge channel for tech over the last 10 years, right? Like the number of SDR and BDRs grew exponentially. Now it's shrinking again for this reason.